From the most trusted names in local news, KDPG Sunday Edition.
Good morning and welcome to the KDPG Sunday Edition. I'm John Delano. This morning we are putting the focus on Congress, on issues like gun control or opioid crisis or addressing carbon emissions. Any new laws would have to come out of Congress. And for the last 7 months, the House of Representatives has been in the hands of the Democratic Party. They took the majority of the House in the last election. And now it's up to them to show America the issues they feel should be addressed. Our first guest this morning is the most senior Democrat representing Pennsylvania in the U.S. House. Congressman Mike Doyle has served the Pittsburgh area in Congress since 1995. And I will be joined in just a bit by Republican Congressman Mike Kelly. Mike, it's great to have you on the show. It's so important, I think, as the Democratic side takes control of the House, for folks to understand what exactly the party down there is doing in control. And I will tell you that the general sense of Congress, I think, from most folks, is that it doesn't matter which party is in control of the House, that nothing happens, that nothing gets done. So we wanted to have you on, and we have Congressman Kelly on after you, to talk a little bit about what you see are the important initiatives coming out of this particular Congress. And I wanted to start just because it's been on everyone's mind. Governor Tom Wolf issued a broad statement with respect to gun violence in Pennsylvania. Are we going to see action? Have we seen action in the Congress with respect to gun measures that might provide a degree of safety for more people in this country?
Well, you've seen the House take action. We have over 300 bills that have passed the House of Representatives that are sitting in the Senate waiting for Mitch McConnell to bring them up for a vote. We've seen tragedy all across the country, and we've seen it in my congressional district with the Tree of Life shooting. Every time one of these things happen, you think Congress is going to do something. I'll never forget when the young children up in Connecticut were slaughtered. As horrific as that was, I thought, that's it. That will be the trigger. But once again, after some encouraging talk from the president about background checks, he had his sit down with Wayne LaPierre at the NRA, and it looks like that just might not be on the table anymore. If we can't even pass a background check bill, and we've sent one over to the Senate. So the House—
Is it a universal background check? None of these loopholes for the gun shows?
It closes all those loopholes.
Including private sales?
Yes, and that's been sent over to the Senate, and it's sitting there, and it could be taken up and voted on as soon as the Senate gets back in a couple weeks, and hopefully they'll do that. I would go much further. I mean, I'm on record for banning all military-style weapons. I don't understand the civilian use for a clip that can hold 30 bullets, or as we saw most recently, this gentleman come in with this double drum capacity barrel that could fire 100 bullets, and he was able to shoot, I believe it was 41 bullets in 30 seconds before the police took him down. And they took this guy down in 30 seconds.
Record time, fact.
And found 41 shell casings on the floor. What is the civilian purpose for those kinds of weapons? If it were up to me, they would all be banned in this country.
Did the House take action on that yet?
We've not had a vote on assault weapons. There's bills that have been introduced, but we haven't taken a vote on that. We have passed the background check bill. And the bill, by the way, passed with bipartisan support. There were Republicans that supported that bill, and I think that's important to say, that it was a bipartisan effort.
Well, Congressman, let me ask you about just the House in general, under Democratic control. You yourself chair one of the important subcommittees of the House Energy and Commerce Committee now. What has it meant having Democrats in control? Does it mean anything?
Well, it means that you control the agenda. You know, the idea of the party in power, they get to decide what bills come to the floor. So that's very important. For instance, in our caucus in the Energy and Commerce Committee, we were able to pass two bills, one that's being talked about widely that I helped co-author with Frank Pallone and Greg Walden and Bob Latta, a bipartisan bill that passed the House, I believe, unanimously on robocalls.
Yeah, nobody likes robocalls. I think all the attorneys general this past week joined in efforts to stop robocalls, regardless of political party. So,
right, and the bill would require the cell phone companies to install free of charge the blocking technology, unless someone opts out. In other words, you don't have to download an app. They're going to do it for you. And the only way it won't be on your phone once this becomes law is if you say, I don't want the blocking technology on my phone. The other thing people get is spoofing. It's called spoofing. You see a phone number, right?
Yeah, it looks like
it's your own number or someone in your neighborhood. And then there's a voice on the other end of the phone speaking Chinese to you. And that's going to be stopped too. With a number you see on your caller ID will be the actual number once this passes.
That bill has passed the House. Has the Senate taken it up yet?
No, it's sitting in the Senate. We're hoping, because of the bipartisan margin that it had, that it will be taken up in the Senate. Another bill I sponsored and wrote was the Autism Reauthorization Act. This is a 5-year reauthorization for services for autistic families, and it also focuses on people that are aging out of services once they turn 21. That bill passed unanimously in the House of Representatives. Sitting over in the Senate, the current authorization expires September 30th. So we need the Senate to act on that bill before the end of September to make sure we can continue bringing services to those families.
Congressman, are there other measures that the Democratic House have passed that you're particularly proud of? And part of why I'm asking this is, again, we think that all the House has been involved in is investigating President Trump and looking for impeachable offenses and things like that. But while that has been going on, other things have happened as well, I take it.
Yeah, we can walk and chew gum at the same time, John. The committees of jurisdiction that have oversight responsibility on the executive branch have a job to do. And they're doing their job. But that doesn't mean the other committees aren't working on their measures.
So give us some idea of what some of the other bills measures that the...
Well, for instance, again, I tend to talk about the energy and the telecommunications end of it. We passed the bill that keeps us in the Paris Climate Accord. The president has said that when that comes time to pull out, that he's going to pull out of it. We think that's important. I held a climate change town hall meeting right here in Pittsburgh that was very well attended at Soldiers and Sailors Hall. It's an important issue, and people care about that.
Maybe help clarify. I thought the president had pulled us out already.
It's not. They're not out yet.
He doesn't have the authority to do it by himself.
He hasn't pulled out yet. But when it comes time, we're saying he has to stay in the accord. So that was important to us. We've been working on the DACA recipients, the Dreamers.
The immigration issue.
Yeah, these are young people who came to this country, many of them at very early age, children, that, they had nothing to say about them coming into the country. Now, these Dreamers have gone to college or high school. They've served in our military, fought for the United States of America. There's 28,000 of them in Pennsylvania. They own homes, they pay taxes, they don't have any felony convictions. They're good people, and they deserve a pathway to citizenship. Now, as you know, DACA was a 2-year program, so September of 17, that had to be renewed. The president did not renew DACA, so next month, September 2019, they are not eligible, although this has gone to court, and they are eligible to reapply for that DACA protection. But, that's going to be decided in the Supreme Court, but that case isn't coming up till 2020. And we want to make sure that no current DACA recipient that's eligible is deported during that period.
Hasn't the president said he wants to keep the Dreamers in this country? Well,
he says these things, but then he takes away the 2-year renewal process for them to reapply to get that status. So what the president says and then what ends up happening are often two different things.
And the House has passed a bill on this issue?
Yes, we've passed the bill, and it's sitting over in the Senate.
On minimum wage, is that another issue? I know there was, I thought that the House may have acted on the minimum wage issue.
The House passed a $15 an hour minimum wage, and it doesn't go immediately to $15 an hour. I think that's important to understand.
It's currently at 7.25, and it's been at 7.25 for a decade, I think.
I think maybe even over a decade. But what this does is, I think the first year it goes up $1.30, and then each subsequent year it goes up $1 something until it reaches $15 an hour. We think that's, the minimum living wage for families. And, working poor in this country, people that get up every day and go to work and they're in a minimum wage job. They may not have benefits, health care, pensions. This is, and a lot of them are working 2 jobs, you know, just to make ends meet.
Well, nobody can live on the minimum wage. I mean, I don't think there's a Republican, Democrat, Independent who would honestly say that you can live and support a family on $7.25 an hour.
Right, and a lot of people will say, well, they're just young people doing this. You're just taking young people out of jobs, but that's not the case. There's a lot of people, and you can see them right here in Pittsburgh, that are working at jobs that are paying the minimum wage or maybe slightly higher than the minimum wage, but not $15 an hour. Workers at UPMC, janitors and the support staff at UPMC don't make $15 an hour. They're making $12, $13 an hour. This is the richest nonprofit hospital in the state. We all know what the CEO of UPMC, a nonprofit corporation, makes and how much money is generated by that institution, which is a great institution in Pittsburgh and a fine hospital system. I use it and my wife uses it, and we're glad it's here in Pittsburgh. But it surely can afford to pay people that work there a living wage, and some of those people are struggling.
We only have a minute left, Mike. Does it frustrate you that the House of Representatives may have passed a number of these bills, but they cannot become law without support in the U.S. Senate? Yeah,
you know, there's a Senate rule that requires 60 votes to move forward. You know, they have cloture.
The filibuster rule.
Yeah, and it's the filibuster rule. It's not constitutional. It's just a Senate rule. And it works both ways, by the way. When the Democrats were in control of the Senate, they loved that 60-vote rule, and when the Republicans are there, they love the 60-vote rule. You know, my math tells me that 51 is a majority of 100, and it just seems to me that's something that needs to be re-examined, this 60-vote.
I have a radical idea, and it doesn't matter to me which party's in control of which chamber. It seems to me that if one house passes a bill, there ought to be a requirement that the other house at least vote on it. They can kill it, they can amend it, but they should at least consider each other's work.
I totally agree. A perfect example, the Senate passed a comprehensive immigration bill with 68 votes, bipartisan. Come over to the House of Representatives, Speaker Ryan refused to put that bill on the floor. And the irony is that bill would have passed. I bet there had been 60, 70 Republicans that would have voted for that bill along with the Democrats. We never got a chance to vote on it.
Well, Congressman Mike Dole, always a pleasure to have
Good
you
to see
on.
you,
And
John.
thank you so much for this update on what the House of Representatives has been doing for the last 6 months under the Democrats. And now that we've spent some time on the Democratic side, it's time to head over to the Republican side with Congressman Mike Kelly of Butler. That is coming up when the KDPG Sunday Edition continues.